Welcome to the Optimistic Views podcast. My name is Lawrence Amsterdam and I'm your host. I just have a great show for you. I got the chance to talk with a man by the name of Bob Barton, Mr. Bob Barton. Know that the show is a little bit longer than the previous show and it's about an hour and a half, so you might want to be sitting down or relaxing, or if you're just driving in your car, whatever you're doing, do whatever you do and just enjoy the show. All right, man. So, first of all, thank you very much for having me here. Thank you for inviting me to your place, Mr. Bob Barton. When we first met, I could remember asking you about some advice on real estate and investing, and you were very, very helpful to me, like, hey, man, you got to make sure you look out for this or look out for that. And at that moment, I figured, like, man, this guy is really looking out for me. I remember you told me to get the landlord, the handbook, right, to make sure you know your rights and stuff like that when it comes to landlording. So, yeah, that was really helpful. And after, like, thinking about the podcast and everything, I said, man, who am I going to get to be my first guest to this podcast? And sometimes you think too much. And then I said, nah, this easy. Mr. Barton. It's the guy that always comes to the store, always helps me out with stuff. So it's a pleasure having you here, man. Absolutely. All right. So, we spoke a little bit earlier in terms of, growing up in Jersey and stuff like that for you. So talk about that a little bit. What was it like growing up in New Jersey?
Growing up in New Jersey was, looking back, it was a good experience.
Right.
It was a good experience.
Right.
Don't know how my people on my mother's side and my father's side got to Montclair, but they got to Montclair, and thank God they did, because it was a great environment to grow up in.
Right.
My education was good. We had a good school. We had good teachers.
Right.
Back in my time, everybody that lived on your street was your parents.
Right.
And you couldn't get away with anything playing out there in the street. You had to watch your P's and Q's, every minute of the day, and so on and so forth. Montclair was a very big sporting town. Our high school was probably one of the best high schools as far as sports was concerned in the state.
Right.
Okay. And so, in a way, you had to be a pretty good athlete to make it in Montclair, because everybody plays sports. And so I played baseball and I ran track.
Nice.
Okay. I can remember my first year trying out for my sophomore year. We started in sophomore year in high school. A lot of places start in ninth grade. We started in the 10th grade.
Right.
But anyway, I remember the first day out to practice. The coach was hitting fly balls out to me. They call them fungos.
Right.
He's hitting fly balls out to me, and he got a hold of a couple. And I went back and got it, and he couldn't believe that I got the ball, because he had, hit it pretty hard.
Right.
But I turned and went forward, turned back, and the ball was there. So long story short, it was a very exciting time for me. Like I said, this was the first day out to practice. And when practice was over, he called everybody in, and told me, or told everybody, was only one person that deserved their uniform that day, and it was me.
That was you.
Yes. That was a biggie. That was a real big experience there.
Right.
But for the most part, as I said, it was a sports town. But academically, they really prepared you for later on in life, going to college, they prepared you for all of that.
Right.
So, it was just a very, very nice place to grow up at. And also, which made it also nice, we were only like about 16, 18 miles from New York City.
Right.
Okay,
right
so,
there.
so, we'd get on the highway and in a half an hour, you're right in the city, so it was, a lot of things that at a very young age you experience, by going to cities, going to New York and so on and so forth.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty good. Around what time was that?
What year?
What year, yeah.
Okay, we're talking about, I was in Montclair from, I guess I got there maybe when I was 2 years old.
Right.
Okay, and I'm born in 42.
Right.
So,
that's a long time.
yeah. So, like, from when I was there, let's say in 44,
right.
I probably didn't leave there until about 64.
64.
Yeah, 64, 65.
And you went to Montclair State.
Montclair State,
Right.
went there, and which was another good experience.
Yeah. What did you study at Montclair?
Accounting was
Really?
my thing. Yeah, accounting.
That's pretty good.
Yeah,
man.
and always was interested in numbers and
Yeah.
and all of that, and I think it helped me through my older days. When I get out there to start to work and
That's true.
and that type of thing, it helped me out a lot. So there again, Montclair was very, very good place to grow up. People that grew up, let's say, in Newark, New Jersey, or East Orange, New Jersey, they always looked at people that from Montclair. They always thought they was bourgeois.
Yeah.
Because it was, Montclair was, gave that type of feeling to everybody. Montclair was just a step above.
Oh, okay.
All
like
the other cities,
All right, gotcha. Yeah. So people actually looked at you guys. Like,
we really weren't. We really weren't.
We
we weren't just like anybody else. Trying
Right.
to make and trying to understand life, and
right.
dealing with what everybody else was dealing with from every other town.
It's probably like how people from Alabama would look at people from Atlanta.
Absolutely.
They
Absolutely.
would look at you like,
yeah.
You think you live in a big city?
Yeah, big city,
stuff
big
like
houses. Parents got a lot of money, but it wasn't that. It was, we were struggling just like anybody else.
Yeah. What was the one thing that actually connected you to accounting? Like, how did you like make that decision to say, I'm going to major in accounting?
I was always type of kid that was interested in money.
Yeah.
Who
isn't?
Trying to understand money. My father, he was in the building industry.
Uh-huh.
And so, I always heard, the bottom line, okay? I always heard, liabilities,
right.
And stuff like that, assets, and what is this all about,
Yeah.
And so at a very young age, I got some lessons from my father hearing these things, and I just wanted to pursue it, I was just interested in it.
Right. That's really good.
Right.
So you mentioned working as a tax accountant.
Right.
Which companies did you like? What was your first job as a tax accountant?
First job as a tax accountant was with Western Union Telegraph Company.
Okay.
And they were out of New Jersey.
Right.
And I started there, and let me go back.
Mm-hmm.
I started really at a small company called Federal Pacific Electric.
Right.
And they were in Newark. That's when I first got into tax accounting. Then I went to Western Union Telegraph Company and worked there for I'd say about 5 years, and got kind of bored with what I was doing.
Yeah.
Okay. Because there was a lot of researching, and you had to keep up with the laws. Tax laws change, yearly.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of that. Long story short, I was working at headquarters there and ran into people that were in sales for Western Union.
Right.
And always a friendly person. Long story short, I got to know some people that were in sales, and they encouraged me to get into it. I'm looking at money too.
Yeah.
You can make a little money sometimes when you're in sales versus sitting down doing
Paperwork
the same thing all the time and looking for those yearly increases.
Yeah. Which probably never comes.
Yeah, well, they come, but they when they do come, they're not as much as you would.
Or it doesn't hurt to make a difference.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So there again, so what I did, I got into sales and with them, and sales that took me to IBM.
Mm-hmm.
And
so you worked at IBM?
Yeah, I worked for IBM.
Wow.
After Western Union.
Right. So working at IBM, when you think about that, when I think about it, the first thing I think, man, these guys are super smart. They know computers well.
Right.
They dominated the 80s when IBM was coming out and challenging Apple and stuff like that.
Right.
Working at IBM for you, what was the best thing about that job?
Well, the best thing, the thing that motivated me to go there
mm-hmm.
at that particular time, if you worked for IBM, that was like getting your master's.
Right. And that was what year was that?
That's going back to the late 70s.
Okay.
Late 70s.
Okay.
So,
nice.
If you had a chance to work for IBM, they were going to send you to school.
Right.
And once you got with them, like I said, it was like working, like having a master's. And everybody,
Precisely.
like you were saying before, kind of looked up to people that worked for IBM.
Right.
It was a status type of thing.
Because they were the leaders in the industry.
Yeah, they were the leaders in the industry.
Yeah, man.
And that was, I was fortunate.
Yeah.
I was fortunate.
Yeah.
One thing led to another. My wife, she also worked for IBM, and that's really how I got to work with IBM.
Right.
I went to a party that her manager was having.
Yeah.
Okay, and he took to me, liked me, and so on and so forth. Thought I would do good with IBM, and that's how really it all started.
Right.
Yeah.
So just at a regular function, you just
showed up, and one thing led to another.
That's good, man. That's really good.
Right.
Yeah. When we met, you mentioned, because I had asked you, like, how do you know all these things about real estate and
mm-hmm.
stuff like that?
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned that you did some property investing.
Right.
What was that first purchase like? Just dive into detail about that one for me.
Well, I had, this goes back to my first house was 1966.
Right.
I probably was around 23, 24 years old at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Was getting married.
Right.
And my wife was going to have, or we were going to have twin boys.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to get into my own thing. I didn't want to get into an apartment or that type of thing.
Right.
So I had saved some money prior to getting married. So long story short, I bought a 3-family house.
Nice.
Okay, and at that time, 1966, the interest rate was something like about 5.25%. I paid, I think the price for the house was something like $16,500, $17,500 for a 3-family. Okay, this was in East Orange, New Jersey, and it was some work that I had to do to the house, but my family's background was construction, so I knew how to do a lot of things, which saved me a lot of money.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Did you rent out any of the
Yeah, I rented out. I stayed on the first floor, so I rented out the second and third floor.
Nice.
So at 25, let's say I was collecting rent,
yeah.
And I was paying for my mortgage, and it also helped me pay for, my car note, things like that.
Right. Did you face, like, certain challenges back then? You know, I mean, we're talking about the 60s, so, you know, back in the 60s with the whole civil rights era and stuff.